Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given.
Hi, this is Brenda J. Today we're going to begin a series of safety planning podcasts, and the first one is going to be on technology safety. We may not cover everything that you need to know on this podcast. So I just wanted to let you know that you can find more details on safety planning tips at the National Network to End Domestic Violence or on Sarah McDougall's website. She has a guide to digital stalking risks. It's a guide to technology risks for victims of coercive control and domestic violence. And you can find that at www.wilderness2wild.com/guide-digital-stalking-risks. Included in this guide, it's a comprehensive 70-page PDF download that outlines supportive safety information on a number of topics, and the list being social media, mobile phones, GPS monitoring, computers, online accounts, stalking, and more. The tools include the warning signs of a stalker, security for victims, safe social media, as well as tips on gathering evidence and reducing risk. So just make sure that your computer or phone, wherever you access that from, or you can download our app, and wherever you access that from would be safe. This would give you any additional tools that you would need outside of this podcast. Both of these links will be located in the show notes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. Today we have Amy and Emily on the podcast. Amy is an advocate for the city of Mesa, and Emily for the town of Gilbert. And they also collaborate with Winged Hope Advocacy Center, which, as Karen and I do work a lot with them as well. So we'd just like to welcome you to the show, ladies.
Thank you so much for having us.
So we just wanted to talk to our listeners for a moment and just let you know this is important information, very educational, to use it if it doesn't apply to you, to just use it as a safe resource for others if needed.
Hi, this is Karen W. And today we'll be talking about creating a safety plan. The following suggestions do not apply to every survivor in every situation. Each plan is so unique to each individual. Multiple safety planning resources have been used to create this podcast, including the Domestic Violence Hotline, the Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence, to name a few.
Okay, first we want to give a safety alert. We want you to make sure that your phone and computer you're using are in a safe location and it's not being monitored by your partner. Make sure all passwords are secure and safe. You may delete this podcast immediately after listening, and if it has been sent to you, you can access it again by going back into the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
If you believe it is not safe for you to enter information into the computer or write down anything on paper, you can listen to this safety plan and think about you. If your computer and passwords are safe, you can create your safety plan at www.thehotline.org. We'll have a link to that, it's a long one. You can click on the link in the show notes for that link.
And if you're in danger, call 911 immediately.
So what exactly is a safety plan?
Yeah, a safety plan is a set of actions that can help lower your risk by being hurt by your partner. RAINN states that safety planning is about brainstorming ways to stay safe that might also reduce the risk of future harm. It can include planning for future crises, considering your options, and making decisions about your next steps. It includes information specific to you and your life that will increase your safety at home, school, and other places that you may go on a daily basis. Safety plans can help you anticipate the dangers that you may face. Just as abusers continually shift their tactics of power and control, your safety plan is an adaptable tool to help increase your safety in your ever-changing situation.
All right, now we're going to talk about when to use a safety plan. Amy, did you want to start with that?
Yeah, of course. I think a safety plan can be used in a number of situations, but it's really taking a moment of clarity to plan for emergencies instead of having to navigate that in the crisis of the moment. So thinking in advance makes it easier to act in emergencies. So a safety plan can be made in a variety of situations for dealing with an emergency, such as when you are threatened with physical abuse or an assault has occurred, for continuing to live with or date a partner who has been abusive, or for protecting yourself after you've ended a relationship with an abusive partner. In my work as an advocate, I've encountered survivors in many different stages of their journey. Some are planning on leaving for the first time. Some are seeking resources after months or years of incessant stalking, and others are navigating family court systems with their abusers, and some of them still live with their abuser. So I often ask the victims and survivors that I work with to really reflect on what does safety feel like for them, and really reflect on that in a moment of clarity and not in a moment of crisis. And thinking about what's the worst that can happen. Because if you plan for that, when you have the resources to collect and prepare for those, then you'll be prepared for them in the moment of the emergency.
Yeah, that's good. And Emily, did you want to go over the dangers?
Yeah, absolutely. Something to keep in mind if you're planning to leave your abuser or your partner or have already left, being aware that abusers often escalate their violence during times of separation can increase risk of harm, including serious and/or life-threatening emergencies or injuries. Making a separation safety plan can really help reduce the risk to you and your children if you have children. So like Amy's talking about, that's such an incredibly great way to put it. Thinking through the different pieces of steps that you can take as you're thinking about a separation safety plan, and having those ideas ahead of time so that when you hit the point where you have a crisis situation, you're able to execute those steps.
Yeah. Yeah. Just making sure you're thinking everything through.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And how do you make a safety plan, Amy?
So, like we mentioned before, everybody's scenario is so different. For some people, that means actually putting pen to paper and saying, okay, if this worst case scenario happens, this is what I'm going to do. For me, one of the first steps I would recommend is identifying who your safety and support network is. Do you have friends and family that you trust that you could go to in an emergent situation? And really identifying those people. And if it's safe to write it down, because for some people it is safe and for others it's not. So again, reflecting on what is the safest for you. But at the very first step is to maybe identify the people in your community, in your support circles, who you trust, who you can disclose information to, who you can maybe share important documents with, that you could give items of clothing and safety items, orders of protection. Identifying who those key people are in your life will be one of the very first steps.
Yeah. And then also they could go to the domestic violence hotline.
Yeah. So if you need help really starting that process, the domestic violence hotline is an excellent resource to start. So if you're really doing this for the first time and you just kind of want to get a document, they have things that you can download, actual physical pieces of paper that are like, who are these people in my life? And it'll have a blank line where you can write down those people. What are their phone numbers? And it can really help you to navigate point by point by point. What are some really important things to identify and write down?
Yeah, I went on the domestic violence hotline and went through the list of questions and added that to this podcast. So yeah, if your computer's safe, it is a great resource.
Yeah, certainly. So it can be really helpful to meet with someone in your community. So the national hotline is really great, but sometimes it can be really helpful to meet with someone in person to help connect you to some organizations in your local community. There's domestic violence support agencies throughout the Phoenix Valley, throughout the nation. And especially if relocation is the safest thing for you, connecting with someone locally who can open those doors physically and metaphorically can be really helpful. So if it's safe to do so, you can hop online and you can Google domestic violence support organizations in my community or near me for someone who's being tracked online or stalked online, or who has spyware maybe installed on their computer. Googling or using your computer to look up those resources may not be safe for you. Maybe using a different device or something that you know hasn't been compromised by your abuser.
Like they could go to the library or use like some other computer.
Yep, doing a factory reset on your phone, going to a library, using a friend or trusted person's device to look up those resources, or connecting with a local nonprofit organization, a domestic violence support organization, to help connect you to those resources. For example, that's something that Winged Hope Family Advocacy Foundation could certainly help you to do.
Yeah.
Right. They have an office where you can go into the office. So,
yeah, Emily, did you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other great things about the National Domestic Hotline, their website's really user-friendly. And if you don't want to have a physical piece of paper, but you'd like to fill out the categories and maybe have it emailed to yourself, or just get a chance to look at what that summary consists of, you can log onto their website and do an entire safety plan in their website. And at the end, it will give you the option to email it to yourself if you'd like to keep a copy in a safe email address, a work email address, a school one, something that the abuser might not have access to, or you can close out of it and they don't save any of your information. So that's an excellent resource.
Yeah. And then did you want to talk about the emergency size pocket contact card? Emily?
Yeah, absolutely. So my organization makes these and gives them out to people, and they can utilize them however they want to. It's got some great contact information as far as local agencies, crisis numbers, national hotlines, but they can also put their personal phone numbers so that they can keep them with them at all times if it's safe to do so. Or they could keep that emergency sized pocket card someplace safe at a friend's house, a desk at work, so that everything's really handy in case they find the need to reach out to any of those resources.
Yeah, that's so important. Now, the first question when I went on the DV hotline asked me was, have you told someone in your family about your relationship? Before we start, I think you did mention this a little bit, Amy. How important is this before we start the safety planning?
Yeah, I went to an advocacy conference recently where a woman was speaking about how she had been abused and she was fleeing her abuser for over 10 years. And she had disclosed that the more and more people who knew what she was going through, the more safe she felt. Because if you feel comfortable disclosing what you're going through to your trusted family members, safety support groups, they can help to call in violations of order of protection on your behalf. They can help to keep you safe. They might be a physical safe house, a safe place for you to go if you need to flee in a moment of crisis. So identifying those people in your life is really, really helpful. And again, being able to disclose that can be very helpful and cathartic too from an emotional standpoint. Going through this type of violence and abuse can be very isolating. So if you can connect with people that you trust, if it's friends and family members, great. If not, maybe again, reaching out to those community agencies to see if you can get connected with a support group, to meet with others who know what you're going through, because it can be a very isolating experience.
Yeah. Okay, so Amy, I know there's different types of safety plans. What are the most frequent safety plans that you encounter?
So in my work, I'm a prosecution-based advocate, and usually by the time someone comes to meet with me, things have either escalated to the point of someone being criminally charged for violence, or people are seeking the assistance of a court order to help to keep them safe, like a protective order. And so I see a number of different scenarios, but we go over safety planning for people who are planning on leaving for the first time, safety plans for people who are planning on staying. Sometimes I work with people on safety plans for reaching out to law enforcement. You could safety plan around that too. Some people that I work with are really surprised to hear that you can call 911 or you can text 9-1-1. So if you're in a scenario where you don't feel safe picking up the phone to call someone because it might alert the person who is going to hurt you that you're calling law enforcement, you can text them. And one of the most important things to text them, if you do plan on using that, is to text them the address that you are located. So 9-1-1 and text the address that you're located, and police officers can and will respond. So safety planning for reaching out to law enforcement, safety planning for getting an order of protection, and after orders of protection are served and how to enforce them. Safety plans for stalking, for harassment, for relocation, and then safety plans for people who are navigating the family court system. There's a lot of folks who still share children with their abusers. And so court dates, safety planning around anniversaries and things that might be triggering in the relationship, safety planning around those dates can be really helpful.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Amy.
Yes, very, very good information. So now we're going to talk about what are some steps for technology safety. So yeah, we definitely live in a technology age. So this is definitely something that's important to talk about as well.
Yeah, of course. This has been something that's been occurring a lot, and I'm encountering a lot of victims recently about technology safety planning, because we use technology every single day. We have our smartphones with us literally everywhere we go. And if that smartphone or that device has been compromised, then it can be disclosing our location to our abuser in every single moment, 24/7. So yeah, I've been working with a lot of survivors on this lately. And if abusers are using smartphones or Google Voice or obscured internet-based numbers to harass you, then it can be really difficult to hold them accountable, because when they're calling, it's not their number, it's a Google-based number or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that can be really, really difficult for victims, because even when they're calling law enforcement and officers are saying, well, hey, I don't know who's making this call because it's coming from a blocked number, there's not a whole lot that they can do about it. One of the most empowering things that you can do, and if it is safe for you to do, is to change your number. And I know we mentioned before, like not disclosing your number to anyone who would disclose it to the defendant. I've worked with victims who have been called by the defendant hundreds of times a day, sometimes more than that. Literally just every single minute of the day is incessant contact. And so one of the most empowering things that you can do is remove their power by just changing your number. I know that's not really an option for everyone. Sometimes we have to keep our number because we have kids and schools and doctor's appointments and this, that, and the other thing that prohibit us from changing our number easily, but it might be an avenue for some. For those who can't change their number, just making a stalking log. I've worked with victims who said, my ex has been calling me hundreds of times a day for years, and I'm getting a lot of pushback from law enforcement now because I'm calling them every single day. If you can make a log and just maybe you're calling law enforcement once a week to say, hey, I'm going to report that the defendant called me 10 times a day, every single day this week. And I'm going to make a point to call you every single week to let you know that it's still happening. And so hopefully the severity of consequences for that person would only escalate as it continues to happen. So just knowing that there are options, changing your number if it's a good fit for you, and then just blocking every single unknown or unsafe number that might come through on your end. If the defendant has ever had access to your device, then it might be a good idea to factory reset your phone or your tablet or your computer to its factory settings so that it would remove any type of spyware or something that they could have installed without your knowledge, that they could be using to track your emails, your correspondence, your locations. Social media is something that a lot of us use every single day as well. So making sure to disable your location on social media. So like a lot of us are checking in on Facebook. Hey, I'm out with friends in downtown, wherever. You're actively posting that information in somewhere that someone can easily access it. So if you're in an unsafe situation that you're trying to maybe not share all of that information as publicly, turn off your location on your Google, on your Instagram, on your Facebook. I know it's super fun to sometimes like post where you are, but not if it's putting you at any type of risk. Disable your locations and maybe just getting a new device. And if that's cost prohibitive for you, maybe working with a local community-based organization. I know the family advocacy centers that Emily mentioned earlier do have cell phones available to survivors who just need a new device. Say, hey, my other ones have been compromised, but I need a way to be able to call 911 if I'm ever in a scenario where I'm not safe. I need a phone. The one that I have is not a good fit. So just accessing a new phone. A lot of community-based organizations will also pay for minutes. So if you don't have like a provider, they can get you 3 to 6 months worth of minutes so that you can call your support group, call your therapists, call everybody that you need to on a device that hasn't been compromised by the defendant. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into internet safety planning and technology safety planning, the National Network to End Domestic Violence has some really, really helpful tips that can be found on their website. And the link will be in the notes of the podcast, I'm sure. Using a computer that you know hasn't been compromised by the defendant. So like if you ever lived with the defendant, it's super common to let your partner use your laptop or your phone or your iPad or whatever. So, and I asked that of survivors that I work with, has he ever had access to your phone? And, because they're showing up at locations where they coincidentally should never be. And in my experience, someone that he might be tracking the location, that he may have somehow installed some kind of spyware to track your location. So using library computers or a friend's computer, someone you trust, to research domestic violence support agencies or safety plans or something like that.
Now
would be
that
an excellent
link
idea.
that you gave us, would that help them to get their, because the first thing you want to make sure is their passwords and that the abuser doesn't have all that, right?
Right. So if you've ever shared your password with them, or if they've ever had access to your device, they can install spyware that can recognize your keystrokes, right? So maybe you've never disclosed your password to them, but they know it anyways. And how would they know that? Because they've installed spyware on your computer that'll track your keystrokes. And so something that we're entering multiple times a day, every single day, are things like passwords and social security numbers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you feel like your abuser may have access to your passwords and things like that, resetting them, changing them right away. But I work with a lot of folks who he's so integrated into their devices and their emails. Like whenever you're resetting a password, it sends an email that he may also have access to. And so sometimes the safest thing is to just start fresh, get a new device and get new emails. Start with something that you know for certain that they don't have access to, because I have worked with folks who are starting from square one, because when they're going through that checklist of, well, have they ever had access to that? I don't know. I can't be certain. And if you don't know, then maybe the safest thing to do is just start with something that you know for sure that they've never had access to. Brand new computer, brand new phone, brand new email. It sucks, but the alternative also sucks.
Yeah. Be careful who you give your email address to. Okay. So Emily, do you want to go over the domestic violence website questions on technology?
Absolutely. So their questions are excellent. They have a good overview here. Do you have and use a cell phone? Has your partner ever checked your outgoing calls, text messages, or browsing history on your cell phone or your computer? Do you have social networking sites? And sometimes people don't think of the different ones, like Pinterest would be a social networking site, Snapchat, all the regular ones we do think of, like Instagram, Facebook, things like that. Has your partner ever sent you an abusive email, text message, or voicemail? Have you shared passwords to your online accounts with your partner? Does a trusted friend or family member have access to your online accounts? Has your partner ever pretended to be you online? And have you ever sent your partner private photos?
And what are some steps for friends and family members to help for technology safety? Emily?
Helping them or asking someone familiar with technology or domestic violence about ways that the abuser may monitor them on cell phones, laptops. There's a lot of different ways and that things can be embedded in phones and can't be seen. So having that checked. Help them to use a computer that the abuser doesn't have access to. This can be really helpful for research or printing out forms, documents, safety plans. That can be really useful. Let them know how to be careful about who they give their email address to and use the blind copy feature, copying the support network in an email. So giving them an opportunity to email their attorney and being the secondary person on that email if they'd like to, or an advocate and being the backup person can be really beneficial to help them keep track. And helping them get a new cell phone or a new computer. Amy's brought up previously, it's a great suggestion. You can factory reset devices sometimes to wipe out some of that spyware and things like that. But it's often ideal to get a completely new device. And so either assisting them with finding resources or having that be something that you directly assist with can be really beneficial for that survivor. The National Network to End Domestic Violence has some really helpful tips.
Yeah, they have a whole list of things to keep an eye out for and recommendations for what to do.
So, Amy, is there any other ways they can assist, like a friend or family member in helping in the technology area?
Maybe even just offering to let them use your devices. So if you know that your devices haven't been compromised by their abuser, maybe letting them know that they have access to your phone when they need to call their attorney, or that they have access to your computer when they need to research domestic violence support organizations. Arrange to have someone screen and log the telephone calls if it's something that's really having an effect on mental health. Offer to do that for them, or remind them to maybe have a point person that can check in on them and go through their call log and help to capture that physical evidence if it's something that they feel like reporting.
Okay, that's good, because I think you get a lot of technology stalking, right?
Yeah, like technology-based stalking and harassment. And yeah, I think that in and of itself could be another whole podcast.
Yeah, so if anybody that's a friend or family member, or you know anyone that can help in that area, that is really much, much needed, because they have to be safe in that area. That's huge, because even if they leave or they relocate, and their technology's not safe, they could be found way too easily. So
Right.
it really got to protect the technology first, I think, and make sure you're safe.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So is there any other important information that you wanted to add to that?
Abuse is never your fault. The person who's causing the harm is responsible for their own choices, behaviors, and consequences. And I am always here to support you and care about you and how you move forward. And so,
Yes, absolutely. It's very important for them because usually they're made to feel like it's their fault or something. So that's very important to stress. Yeah.
Right. Love should never hurt, and everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for coming on to the podcast. Where can someone find you if they wanted to reach out, or who can they contact to get started on their safety plan?
I think if you live locally, the best thing to do is to just Google domestic violence support organizations in your area. I'm personally located at the Mesa Municipal Court with victim services, and a Google search of City of Mesa Victim Services would lead you to myself or one of my colleagues, all who are very capable of starting a safety plan with you.
Great.
yeah, and I completely agree with that. Lots of community-based organizations are great. And if it's safe for you to Google them, that's a good place to start. Amy's department is incredible. We collaborate quite often, and I appreciate them. Most court systems and police departments have advocates embedded that are able to assist. And if someone wanted to reach me personally, I am with the Gilbert Police Department. You could call our non-emergency line. Also, something you can Google, but it's 480-503-6500 and request a referral to victim services, and they'd be able to get you over to us as well.
Okay. And then anyone like outside of Arizona, they can just Google, like domestic violence hotline. We've already given that number, but they can Google any of those services.
Yeah. And I really like that the domestic violence hotline is a really easy acronym to remember. So in a moment of crisis, just remember 1-800-799-SAFE.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much, Amy and Emily.
This is going to be really a good, helpful baseline for people to have. Like, this is going to be great.
I can't agree more. I thought the same thing. And I think Brenda and I actually talked about that. I was like, I cannot wait to be able to incorporate this into my outreach to victims. And I'm sending them emails all the time that say, hey, here's a couple of resources that we talked about. And, I gave you a lot of information and it's overwhelming. Yeah. So when you have the time to digest this information, you'll have it in your back pocket or whatever. To be able to equip them with something like this, where, they can take a deep dive if they want, or they can just list the quick, most important, essential things, it's going to be really helpful, really empowering. So that's why I cannot thank you enough. This is going to help us in our safety planning discussions with the people that we work with.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening, and until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.